co-host Archie, and we got a special live stream for you guys this Monday. We have Powered by the Youth co-founder Alexandria Raquel King, and we got Luis Serrero, who's also with the organization, and we also have P.O.P field director Nick Lesem, and we're going to be talking about the future of the Democratic Party and what Powered by the Youth is doing in Texas and registering people to vote and things like that. So how are you guys doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm glad to have you guys on. I'm can't wait for the conversation for us to have today. And so before the live stream started, we were kind of talking a little bit about Beto and his poll numbers, and y'all were talking about just the fundamentals of, we have to get people registered to vote, and we have to fight against this corrupt system that the Republicans are, they're trying to do voter suppression. And so let's just continue a little bit with that, and we'll just see where the conversation goes from there.
So maybe so I'll ask I'll just ask the same question. So I was looking at a poll yesterday, and I just noticed that Beto's unfavorability numbers were pretty high. And as somebody who desperately wants to get Greg Abbott out of office, and who wants to put up a Democratic candidate who's a contender, I was a little worried about that. Now, since you guys work for the Beto campaign, right? You guys can allay my concerns and such, I hope.
Yeah. So one thing is that what we're really focusing on is protecting voting rights. And so, polls are polls. We can postulate all day. We can talk all day about what we want to see and what we're going to see and our predictions. But that only matters if we get on the ground and do something about it. And Beto, as much as people would love to see him run for governor, he hasn't announced yet. But what he is doing is rolling up his sleeves and getting down to work to make whoever runs in this governor's race to make it a fair fight, make it a fair election. And that way we have the power to elect Abbott out of office, no matter who's running. And so, we got to fix the voting suppression first, so that way we can use the power of the people and vote Abbott out.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with Alex. I mean, emphasizing that, he hasn't run for governor yet. We don't work on a campaign. We're working on a grassroots organizing movement to drive voter registration and fight suppression. But, you're right. I don't want to dodge the numbers, because even though these numbers are specifically about the gubernatorial race, they indicate other things, right? They indicate basically the popularity of Democrats, which influences our power in the legislature, which would influence any Democrat that goes up for office. And so, yeah, you're right. Like, these numbers need to be concerned. But like I mentioned a little bit before we started talking, something interesting to note about these numbers is people who are unsure or who haven't heard enough. For Abbott, it's about 7%, right? Most people know what Abbott's done and are sick of him. He has a higher unfavorability rate than Beto. Beto had an unsure numbers in the low 20s, I believe. So there's still a lot of people that we need to reach. There's still a lot of people that aren't sure. And when you have 23% unsure, that's a lot that could swing. Another thing to note is potentially how voter suppression could be reflected in polling. In 2016, we had a lot of issues with undercounting certain populations, especially in states like Michigan, where we expected a clear win for Hillary Clinton, ended up getting a win with Trump. So I would be interested to look more into maybe these polls share some of the same issues. Maybe they're looking at registered voters. Maybe they're only looking at eligible voters. And with bills like SB 7,
53 people taking the poll or whatever, because that's happens.
Exactly.
No, totally get that.
So I'd definitely be interested to dig a little bit more into that, because we definitely have some potential similarities that could be going on.
It doesn't get mad at me for asking too many questions, but just one more.
Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I was I think one of the issues in Texas, especially for Democrats, is that we don't really have anybody to rally around, right? Because, I mean, if we're talking, Senate, we don't have any Democrats there, but we have some congressional candidates. So I know and I know Beto said some things that, are interesting for Texas. So I know he believes it. I know he came out and said, I'm going to do something with your guns. And I think I think that's important because I mean, there's going to be a big time problem with that. And we could talk about that gun rights bill that just came through the governor's office. But I mean, I was impressed by that. But what do you guys think about just the Democratic representation in Texas as far as leaders? How do you feel? How do you feel we're doing on that?
I think honestly, um, Beto showed us what we can do in 2018. It was a competitive race and one of the hardest, if not the hardest state to vote in, with allegations of things going wrong at the polls, even with all of our legal forms of voter suppression. So one, I'm not too worried if we get the right policy passed, if we get the right people we're registering people to vote across the state because it is our belief that as soon as we start outreaching to communities that have never been reached out to before, that we're going to see the reflection of the people. And all we can do as Democrats is run on our values. And frankly, when Democrats win, we know that our values and our policies are popular. So, sure, do we need someone to rally around? Yeah, but that's the same situation for every campaign ever. It's not a unique situation. And so I think we have strong leaders in our state house. We have people who are willing to, put their neck in the movement, get down to the ground and work. And we need all those people coalescing together to focus on the issues. And, personality politics is a whole other thing. But once we get to the heart of the issues, I think we're going to start reaching more people because people want results. And that's what we're trying to get.
One of Beto's classic lines is that Texas isn't so much a red state as it is a non-voting state. And I think that kind of summarizes the Democratic strategy.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Because do you have one more? I just want to ask about this McAllen mayor's race real quick.
Wait, hold on. Well, let me, because I want to add to Alexandria's point. Yeah. I think coalescing is the best thing that the Democratic Party can possibly do. I think building these coalitions, getting people activated, reaching across the aisle within the left, I think that's definitely what needs to be done if we're going to make major change in Texas. And like I was saying before the live stream, we have to do that at a local level. Like everything has, and that's one of the things I love with Beto. He was going to all of the small places in Prairie View and Brenham where politicians don't ever go. And I think that is super important because people, those people feel disconnected. They feel left out. And with Beto going to those disenfranchised areas, it shows that like someone cares. And so, like I said, and that's one of the things that we do with P.O.P, which is protest, organize, and participate. We really focus on bringing coalitions together within the left because that is the only way we're going to effectively bring change, not only in Texas, but in the United States. But go ahead, Nick, what you was about to ask?
Yeah, so I'm sorry if I'm giving making you guys work for it here, all right? But I just I'm curious, very curious about this. So McAllen, right? That's a Democratic stronghold in Texas. And I wonder to myself, there's something going on in this country. I don't know what it is, but the demographics and the things people believe are changing. And in McAllen, which has been solid Democrats, majority Hispanic, right? They voted in a Republican. And that city's right on the border. All right. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on? Because if they just went through 4 years of Donald Trump, okay, and I'm not saying that they're because they're Hispanic that they don't have individual political beliefs are different and not just one set, but it is strange to me. And the guy who ran in that state, he mixed in some of like the progressive, like the normal progressive policies that me and you guys push, and then he also mixed in some conservative stuff. But apparently people like snatched right onto that. And people with the voting rights thing, and I'm not trying to beat on Beto because I think that we need to get all that stuff fixed. But people's economic position right now is in such a state that people are getting desperate. And when people get desperate, they throw Hail Marys, and we've thrown one Hail Mary in 2016. The thing, I'm a history major. That's what I do. I plan to teach one day. But one of my favorite presidents is Lyndon Baines Johnson. And he was very successful in the state for 20 or 30 years. But when he spoke, like he did it in the way that a lot of Texans and a lot of poor folks that don't get reached out to, in a way that they could understand. And because he was a great storyteller, right? But then he also had action to back that up as well. And I keep wanting to see, and this is just my humble opinion, I keep wanting to see Beto pick up that mantle. Like with LBJ, he used to, like, when he was trying to get Medicare passed, he would go up to these senators and he would say, hey, why don't you vote for this bill? So when your grandkids grow up and they're talking to their kids and they can look at them and say, hey, that system of healthcare we put together that takes care of grandma so she doesn't have to worry about her health insurance, grandpa did that. And LBJ would push legislators like that. And I just wish I could see a little more of that, because I think that, yeah, there's this arm of money that people are motivated by. But the other thing people are motivated by is having their name remembered in history, especially politicians.
Yeah.
So
legacy. It's all about legacy.
That's right. Gion, please, if you got something.
Oh no, go ahead. I think Alexandria was about to say something.
Sure. And then Luis, you go first and I'll go afterward.
Sure. Yeah, I think, Nicholas, you made a couple points first, and I want to make sure we get to both of them. First, talking about, specifically the McAllen race. I think there's a few things on that, and you're right, it's certainly an interesting case. But first thing to note is, I think, kind of something what Gion was talking about a little bit, about the importance of local politics. Local politics, usually party doesn't matter so much. Party is a lot less indicative. And I think that's kind of reflected in what you were saying, that Villalobos came in with different positions. He took some positions from the left, he took some from the right. On paper, he might be a Republican, but frankly, I personally am not opposed to Republicans being in office. I'm opposed to Trump Republicans being in office, or Republicans that want to strip our voting rights being in office, or Republicans that want to,
or just authoritarian
rights, right? Being in office.
I mean, essentially, yeah.
I think more importantly, it's that, at the local level, which, like Gion said, is extremely important, right? You can do a lot of great work at the local level. And I think that's just more indicative of him being on the ground, him knowing how to, in a sense, coalition build, mix and match which positions, would be appealing to the local community. But I think another thing that's kind of an issue, bringing it back to voting rights, is that he only won with 26% of the vote. People don't vote in local elections. You have very, very little turnout in local elections. Oftentimes it's in like the 10s, 15s, 20% in local elections. And I think, like Gion, like you were saying, if we could drive that up a lot more, if we could really get people voting in local elections and paying attention, we might end up with more Chris Hollands, more Lena Hidalgos, who did great work in Harris County in recent elections. And if we focused more on that, I think that's where you see a lot of change, a lot of power coming from Democrats, or even Republicans, but Republicans that we can work with, Republicans that work with the people.
Yeah, I think, and I said this at the Prairie View rally with Beto, it's all about policy. I think at the end of the day, it's all about policy that's going to affect the average working person's life. And politics have gotten so far away from that. And so we need this grassroots movement, and we need working class people to be involved, because working class people know working class people struggle. And so we need those people active in politics, and we need to spotlight that. And it all has to be about policy. Medicare for all, Green New Deal, and how we go about messaging it is totally different. You can call it whatever, but it's what it does on paper that truly and utterly matters. I
agree. And you know what, I couldn't have said it better, especially about the coalescing part. It's like, I'm going to answer this as an organizer. I did my first canvas, my first phone bank at barely 15 years old,
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going on my 4th year of doing this. And I think this is where why I wanted to start a youth powered movement, because we know as an organizer, I'm going to give a very organizer answer. It's like, it's about mobilizing, and it's about coalescing with the right people and getting them out to vote. Just like Luis articulated perfectly, we see low voter turnout the more local elections get. So why do we need to make sure that people know why this is important? And one of the very important statistics that we used in formulating Powered by Youth is that a Tough Circle poll showed that over 67% of young people in Texas had never been reached out to by a political entity. And that number was 75% for young Latino voters. So if you're not communicating what your policy is, much less that you're there, how can we expect people to get out and vote? Much less, why is it so important? So I'm like, that's not on the responsibility of those people because of the system we work in. It's a very much like we're campaigning. You're marketing yourself. You're showing yourself. Why are you the person who should represent me? So, I'm like, you know what? We're going to start a grassroots movement of powered by young people to show like, hey, this is why you should get involved and why it's important and why it's so critically important to show up not only for your presidential election, but your local mayor's race or school board commission, because we build on policies and it's all so entrenched in your community and people don't even realize the policies that they live day to day and that they're affected by. So I'm like, bottom line is if we don't make ourselves heard and we don't market ourselves, how are people supposed to know? And that's it.
That's right, Alexandria. I mean, I agree with a lot of that, a lot, like right down to the bone of it. But I just, so like when I was working for Mike Siegel, I worked on his campaign in 2020. We were looking at where the Democrat, where we were going to fish out voters, and they pulled me aside and they said, there's certain areas that we just don't go to. We don't go in those areas and canvass them. And it was completely a strategic, it wasn't because they didn't want to go there. It was a strategic thing, right? But that's one problem. But then you have, I went, we finally started going into those communities like late in the race. And they were like, you're the first person, I've seen come out here, right? But that isn't, and we only drove like 10 minutes, you get into the country outside of Katy, like in 10 minutes. And, I mean, the problems down there when you start getting out into the country are bad. I mean, the poverty is really, really bad. And people feel like that Republican or Democrat, it's just more of the same. And,
Nick, I don't know if you remember in that campaign, we started talking a lot about the corruption aspect, and that really got people on board because people in general know that politics is corrupt. And as soon as a line that we would use was Mike McCall was like one of the richest congressmen
in Congress.
In Congress, and he's been in there for 15 years, and he doesn't even knock on doors. He doesn't, his campaigning is like really none. And he's just for his donors. And so that line really struck hard with everyone. I know I had a one-on-one with Beto, and I told him, if I was like, if you do run, bro, like this is what you need to run on. You need to run on economic populism, and you need to run on the corruption that's happening in the state.
I am like, guys, I'm 1000% for it. Just don't hate me for holding my breath here, because like I've been there and I've done it, and I worry about Beto, not so much that I think he has, because part of politics, right, is you want the constituent to look at you and say, I may not agree with you, but I trust you, right? And I trust Beto would do the right thing. What I am worried about is, look, this state, we're all from Texas here. We know how people operate in this state. They want big things. They want to hear about big policy ideas. That is what got Lyndon Baines Johnson elected. If you guys can't go out there and excite people with the possibilities of Texas are just endless, right? I mean, we could, birth the second energy revolution if we wanted to. We could build a high-speed rail from Houston to Dallas if we wanted to. We could propose a Medicare for all solution in this state if we wanted to. And oh, by the way, we have like $40 billion and just like sitting in the bank because we don't ever expect, open up that purse and start working on our infrastructure. So like, I want that, and I hope Beto delivers that.
And I think we all want big solutions to big problems. And once we get the candidate for that gubernatorial race, I know I'm an organizer. I'm going to be out there fighting for it, and the rest of my team's going to be out there fighting for it. But where Beto's at right now is powered by people.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. We're like, our focus right now, fixing voting rights, combating voting suppression. And I understand a lot of people want to see Beto run for office, but when we get to the point where we have a candidate, I'm with you. We have so
write that down, Gion. She's with me on that. All right.
We have some big ideas in Texas. I mean, everything's bigger in Texas, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
So we have so many big ideas that we can start to work together to fix all the big problems and issues that we've been dealing with, and the corruption and we've seen, and just kind of absolute bad policy we've seen from Abbott. Everyone recognizes that. We just got to make sure that when we have our candidate and we have our groups who are on the ground doing grassroots work, we're outreaching to all our communities, all right people, especially those who are underrepresented. And that's how we fix that. So that's how we fix that problem.
Yeah, Nicholas, I think we got to look at it kind of like a relay race, right? Like we got two things we need to take care of. First, we need to take care of our voting rights, right? We need to make sure SB 7 doesn't pass in the special session. And that's like the first leg of the race. And only once we've completed that can we move our focus onto actual elections. Because if SB 7 passes, it's going to be so much harder for any Democrat to win. So it's kind of like we need to solve this issue first. And once we make it this stretch of the race, then we can switch all of our energy. And Beto said he won't announce anything until SB 7's defeated. Only then will we see if Beto decides to run or who decides to run. And then we can put all our energy into electing someone.
And the analogy of a race is perfect because we're in a race against time. The special legislation is coming up. A special legislative session is coming up. It's right around the corner. So it's like all of the grassroots movements, everybody who cares about their neighbors in Texas and everyone who cares about making sure everyone has a voice, we have to have all eyes and all ears and all our hands on this issue to make sure that we protect our voting rights, because that special session's coming up. And if SB 7 gets passed, we're not going to be able to see all those big solutions that we want.
Okay.
So we're in the race.
I'll be there. Tell me where to be, Alexandria. Where do we need to be when that does happen? Because I'll, 1000%. I mean, I'm a total. I could be transactional if that's how things work. I suppose they do in politics like that. Then yeah, we'll be there for you. But we know that I have a feeling just in my gut that Beto is going to run for governor. Okay, and I just want to have early conversations so I can see where it's going, because and this is in no way representative of P.O.P or Gion or anything like that, but I'm putting my money, behind somebody who's going to be loud and progressive about stuff. And that's just me.
Well, yeah. And, that's what we always, I just did a presentation for the Katy Democrats, and I said that's exactly where the future of the party is going. And so I guess that kind of leads into this next question I have. And this is for Alexandria and Lewis. What do you see the future of the Democratic Party going, and what do you think they should do?
Huge question.
Honestly, again, Organizer 101, I think it's going in and realizing that our successes in 2018 largely, if not all, had to do with grassroots organizing and bringing power back to people. Like I said, once we win, we know our policies are popular. Like no one would outright dream of ripping away Social Security outright now, and we know that that's very much a policy of the left. So we have to grassroots organize and reach out to the right people. Like that is going to be my broken record. Like I said, Luis already knows me. He knows I'm a broken record. Like I'm like, outreach. That
outreach.
is GOTV is the name of the game. I'm an old school fashioned organizer. I'm like, all right, let's go knock on some doors. Let's call some people. Let's text some people. Let's get the word out, because I genuinely believe that if we get as many people out to vote as possible, the people are going to vote for what they want. And that's all we need as Democrats.
So I have, so voter turnout is very low in Texas. We agree with that. And so like I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Economic, discontent, or just outright giving up, right? But how do you motivate people to vote if you're not showing, like, how they don't remember, right, what it's like when the government comes and helps them? People in this country, when they think of the federal government, state government, local government, they think of the DPS. They think, man, I really hate it there, and I bet the entire government is run just like it is at the DPS. And you say, we're going to fix it by voting rights, right? Well, but people don't have that. Okay, I can vote now. Now I can get what I want. You have to maybe motivate them first with like all the things that I've laid out kind of extensively here, to get them out there to vote, to get them pumped up to vote, so to speak. Because those checks that we got, those stimulus checks, I mean, that's never happened, before. There's been tons of people who have been struggling, getting sick, not being able to pay their bills, and the government, except for the limited social safety net that we have in this country, doesn't lift a finger. So that's like, people's mindsets are different, I think, maybe. And then my last question is okay, voting rights is super important in Texas. What about going at it from multiple angles, like getting petitions together, like just throwing it up in their faces in any way that you can? I mean, if you're just going to go for it you're like, well, we got to elect leaders who will do this. Well, that's one way of doing it, but why don't you also push it from like the grassroots like that, That big question, Lewis. If you need to take 3 parts, I'm sorry, it's very large.
No. Yeah, and help me out if I like miss part of the questions. But I 100% agree with you. The Democratic Party cannot be the party of not Republicans. Like that can't be our platform. Our platform can't be just not them. You're totally right. We need to have something that we stand for. And if that's high-speed rail, if that's universal healthcare, let's make sure like we stand for it. Let's make sure that we have platforms that we're giving to people. But I also think it's interesting to look at this future of the Democratic Party in organizing, like Alexandria said, in the context of Georgia 2020, right? Exactly. Georgia 2020, apart from Ossoff and Warnock, like as far as the presidential race, was very much for Biden. And I think, the numbers showed that Biden was not a very exciting candidate. People didn't get out there to vote for Biden. A lot of it was against Trump. I think numbers were 60-40. So looking at it,
I want to interject real quick right there. There was also the $2,000 checks. There were people pumped up for Biden. Okay, I got good. But like there was also $2,000 for every household on the table and $3,000 tax credits. I mean, the economic stuff works. I just want you guys to know that. Like,
no, I think you're totally right.
Yeah, I think everybody knows it.
We know.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, and I wasn't trying to avoid that. I 100% agree. Like I'm saying, we need to have a platform of things we stand for. But I think Georgia, it shows us that I thought there was no chance we would ever flip Georgia. Yeah. And not only flip Georgia presidentially, but flip 2 Senate seats in Georgia. That was ridiculous. That was unbelievable. The fact that we did that, and you're right, part of it was off of economic promises, but we flipped that based off of Stacey Abrams' grassroots organizing. Sure. And I think that's part of the reason why I believe in Powered by Youth and Powered by People. I'm not sure I would have been as optimistic. I'm not sure I would have dedicated as much time to this organization if I hadn't seen it work in Georgia. And I think if we look at it from that standpoint, I see a future for the Democratic Party in the South of all places due to grassroots organizing.
Absolutely. And I just would like to piggyback off of that. Like, we need to bring a huge round of applause, not only to Stacey Abrams, but to the New Georgia Project. And one of my favorite mentors is Nsé Ufot. I work directly under her with a study program she was doing at our university. as one of her student liaisons. And that woman is amazing. And she really taught me that, beyond just personal incentives, like it's really easy when you're caught up in politics and you're in this field to see people's personal incentives and their selfish reasons for wanting what they want. But, she like restored a lot of my faith in humanity to where like people weren't just getting out for those $2,000 checks. Like people knew that the economic reasons were working because very much like the intersections of voter suppression, as all oppression is at the intersection of classism, racism, misogyny, and xenophobia. You name it, we know voter suppression falls upon those lines. We know that polls close when working people finally get out to vote. We know that voter IDs and stringent laws, like stringent voter ID laws, such as that we're seeing in Texas, are racist and classist. We know that these things are in play to combat the power of people. And so that's where it's like, if we register as many people as possible in Texas and we mobilize and we strategically fight against this, we can change it for the better. And that's why I'm like, organizing works. We know that I worked on the Ossoff campaign as well. Like we know that per precinct, we got 5 more people out to vote, and that made the difference. Calling 5 more people. We can make 5 phone calls. If we wanted to make 5 phone calls tonight, each of us, we could do that. And that's 5. That's like multiplied by.
That's 25 people. Yeah.
Exactly. We've reached out to 25 people, and we only needed 5 people, 1 precinct. Sure. So it's like, this is the power of grassroots organizing. And that is why I'm like, they're separate tents of the Democratic tent of the left. We have our infighting about how we have to achieve universal health care, but at the end of the day, we all know that everyone has the right to health care.
Yeah.
We all have different ways how to get there. But we all got to like work together to make sure that we can have those conversations and not be obstructed by obstructionist policy that is being led by the right. And so the first way to get there, our future, is by coalescing together.
Sure.
Because the Republicans always coalesce together. They always fall in line. And sometimes, and the Democrats, we do like, and this is one of the things I said, like, in 2016, a lot of people in my generation, a lot of the millennials, we got blamed for Hillary not winning. But if you look at the numbers, we came through and we voted. It was just, she just lost in certain areas. She lost in the Rust Belt because she wasn't in the Rust Belt. And, and so that's like, we do need to coalesce, but we also need to coalesce behind the right person.
Well, I may be canceled for this, but like Hillary Clinton was a historically bad choice to run for president. I mean, that, one of the things is that, there was that, but I would argue with you that she wasn't speaking to those people. I don't think she visited any of those states.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. I said she didn't go to the Rust Belt.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I misheard you. My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And Joe Biden was moderately better, but then not so much on the policy. Hillary Clinton was a little bit better than him than that. But Joe Biden's more likable. I just get this feeling that the Republicans really aren't that hard to beat. If you want to go back and get the South back, like Lewis was saying, the South was firmly in the camp of the Democrats when FDR was president, when LBJ was president. In fact, right up until like the Reagan Revolution, the Democrats had the Southern bloc going right back to Carter. Carter was, I think, maybe it was Bill Clinton, but Carter, I think, was the other president who took Georgia, because that didn't happen very much. But all I'm saying is that the Democratic Party then, why don't you guys just use the same metrics that they had then to like bring the base back?
I agree with you. Like those historical trends are correct. However, I do think that we're in a different climate of discourse than we were back then. Like,
I would agree with that.
But that's culture.
Like with the historical, like we know that we were also working with Dixiecrats, like
Sure.
we're also working with people who just didn't have the same moral discourse that we know that we're having in the left right now.
Okay.
And so, the past is the past, but we know that like in contemporary history, our mobilization efforts going off of our values of protecting human rights, that's what's working.
Yeah, well, Nicholas, can I ask you a question? Because
Sure,
I'm curious to
please.
hear something that Gion said a little earlier was about Republicans always sticking together and always falling in line.
Yeah.
Which I want to slightly challenge, Gion. You're right in most cases, but I think especially we saw Liz Cheney most recently as an example of a Republican standing up to the very Trumpist, not even a wing anymore, just the Trumpism in the Republican Party, and then getting immediately cut out. So, Nicholas, do you see this as a new kind of Republican Party and just a different animal than we had to deal with?
Well, if I could interject real quick, I think, wait, hold on. I think if you look at it, if you look at the policy that Liz Cheney, if you look, she's voted with Donald Trump 90% of the time. And so, I'm like Alexandria, I'm a broken record. So I think when it comes down to policy, that matters more. And so, she did discourse with the January 6th, but anybody with a functioning brain would push as far away from that as possible. But I think when it comes down to it,
yeah,
she was one of the only Republicans to do it, and then she got cut out. So how can we deal with the Republican Party that won't even talk about January 6th?
That's true. And that's why I'm a little bit worried when you say I want to work with Republicans, right? Is because this party is it's like the biggest, S-word show I've ever seen in my life. And this is like what I'm talking about is that like this may be a situation where there is not going to be bipartisanship, and we might just have to win with the majority, and we just need to be ready to do that. I mean, what is the House of Representatives all about? It's about crushing the minority. They do that every single day of the year, 365 days a year. Look, we outnumber Republicans, and the only thing the Democratic Party isn't doing is they're not appealing to the base or the workers who seem to be going to the Republican Party. I mean, I have friends in England, and they're like, what? Like in our country, the workers support, they support labor. In your country, they support the conservatives. Like, what's going on there? Like, what is the reason behind that? And because it's crazy. They should that doesn't from a world standpoint, from a trends perspective, that makes no sense. And sorry, that's a big question too. And
But wait, hold up. Wait, hold up. God dang it, I lost my train of thought. What did you say earlier in that, Nick? You said.
Oh, I said I have buddies of mine. They live in England.
No. Before that.
Something about just winning, no bipartisanship, winning.
Oh no, okay, no.
Yeah,
Listen. You said you would be wary of working with Republicans, and yes, I can understand that. But what if a Republican is running on Medicare for all, UBI, legalization, defunding the police, and all of that? You wouldn't want to
working with that. I wouldn't be opposed to working with a Mitt Romney who passed a healthcare plan in his own state. That's different. But that is the exception. It is not the rule. That is
of course, but that's what I'm saying. I feel like out in Texas, we have a large field, and we can experiment. We can have some infiltrators run as Republicans, but run on a a very progressive package. I think, I don't know how far that would go, but in certain areas who will never listen to a Democrat, why don't we try and do that? I think out in Texas, we are not hold to the all of the other models that we see working in other places. Even though I do think getting people out to vote and organizing at a local level is two huge things that I think that'll always work.
I'll answer that from my perspective. I think that people want truth, right? They want you to do what they say in this country. The Republicans do what they say. The Democrats don't do what they say. And I think it causes cognitive dissonance in the voters, where they are confused as to what are they voting for? what, you know, because we don't know. Sometimes they're for the things they need to be, and sometimes they're just checked out to lunch, man. And the Republicans, they do what they say, and people see that, and that's important in working class constituents and people of color who don't have like a sophisticated knowledge of politics. They need to, at the very least, see that what you're talking about is the truth, and that's just where that's, you know, my opinion of that. So, Archie, man, there you are.
You could just be against everyone.
That's right.
I think that's a mouthful.
Gion, you are such a coalition builder, brother. I mean, you took a tough hill right there, my friend. But
Oh,
that's why Gion, me and Gion, well, that's why I wanted to work with Gion so bad, is because of his curiosity, right? I mean, that's it, as long as you can keep your curiosity, you don't lose it in between your teenage years and your adulthood, you're gonna be all right, and you're gonna have an advantage. And yeah, so pre- appreciate what you said. I may not agree with you, Gion, but I'll walk to hell with you if that will change some stuff. All right.
man, all I know is, I mean, it's working, bro. And I think transforming, you know, like Alexandria was saying, just that organizing at the local level, and not only organizing, but us as young people running for office. I think that needs to be another huge part. We can't expect all of these older people to write legislation that is going to be in favor for us. When do they don't understand our struggles, our everyday struggles. And so that's another huge part, not only organizing, but us sitting in those positions of power, like in Prairie View. They have one of the youngest city council members. I think he's 26 or 20.
Nathan, yeah, Councilman Nathan Alexander. He's 23 now. He ran when he was 22. He was still enrolled as a student in Prairie View A&M University, and right now he's the youngest elected official in the state of Texas.
And, you know, I'd also like to give a shout out to one of our own team members, Marcel McClinton, who ran for city council at 18 years old, fresh out of high school, knowing that he had the experience and the competency to do that.
Yeah.
And I just would like to give a prop, like, you know, all of us, we're still fighting against this system that's not made for us. All of us who threw everything we've got into it, we're making a difference. And, you know, I just want to give, like, I love Marcel. He's one of our best organizers.
Yeah. I actually worked on his campaign. I
That's
was one of
awesome.
his campaign advisors. Yes, I love Marcel. He's like my little brother, and our car rides around the city of Houston, we would talk about politics and talk about the future, and just how we were just both laying down the brickwork of change. And I love Marcel. That's my bro. So shout out to Marcel McClinton, always working hard. That brother man is in Colorado. He's doing his thing. He's in school, and we know he's going to do a lot of great things.
I mean, and Archie, you'll know this, but and Gion, you'll know this. you know, not, and for anyone like that's young and listening to this, I want to make sure like you understand, not only did Marcel run, but Marcel ran and he got 22,000 votes.
Yes.
My man,
Yeah.
he didn't just run a campaign and then like didn't end up doing anything. He ran a campaign and got 22,000 votes in the fourth largest city in the United States of America,
No
and
doubt.
forced a runoff election with
That's one of
the
the
city council.
statistics that strikes me as interesting, that in the federal government, I believe that the Democratic, the people who are in office are like 70 years old on average. I believe that's the number. And Republicans, I believe, are 55. That may be one of the pieces to the puzzle right there, is that we at the
It
end,
is.
and the
You know,
bigger
and I think that's changing. You know, I think that's changing, but change doesn't happen overnight. So a movement is called a movement because we have to take time to build it. And, you know, like, I think that's why we saw an influx of young people running in 2018 in response to what we saw in 2016. It's like, you know, everyone's not going to be on board overnight, but if we keep pushing and pushing and pushing, we're going to get there. And then like, it's only going to exponentially grow. And those things are changing. That's why we see people like AOC running, Cory Bush, like those people are much younger than our average senator, despite all their like, you know, the non-intersecting identities there. I'll just leave it at that. Like that's why we're seeing like an influx of people who've never been represented in politics throwing their all in it, you know? And like that's not a new thing either. Like we're just building upon the movement that we're standing upon the shoulders of people, you know, people that were
before us.
Well,
Exactly.
I mean, like
that's why it's called a movement.
I mean, historically, though, people like generations usually, it's taken a really long time for you know that the oldest millennial is 40 years old, if you can believe that or not. It is taking a historically long time for us to move into positions of power. I think that's really interesting, you know, from just a standpoint of politics, right? That it is that way. But yeah, look, man, like that is, I think that's freaking awesome. And you know,
well, yeah, Nick. Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead, Alexandria. Go ahead.
I think I'm just gonna say one thing quickly. Like, you know, also millennials were catching the brutal end of a set of policies that weren't enabling them to have the same set of wealth and resources that our older generations of senators and legislators and policy advisors, people in the back rooms making the decisions and writing the legislation, they didn't have those resources. You know, they're having to work several jobs to make ends meet. And if that's that generation, we're still being like, the more you let policy sit, the more effect it has and the more it permeates into society. So we're going to have to work, me and Luis's generation, twice as hard to overcome what millennials have had to face because they didn't have the access of resources generations before them had.
Yeah, I believe in 2008, which is when I graduated high school. That's how old I am, 30. That was right, that financial recession, boom. You know, next thing is 2020, boom, COVID. The chances for us, like there are 40-year-olds that are millennials who don't have a dollar, not a dollar in savings. Okay, like that is like that. What age are we buying houses at? Well, later than any other generations. I mean, me and my girlfriend, we have a house. We pay a mortgage on that. We're lucky because we're like 20% of the millennial homeowners in this country. That's like, when I say like, that's what I'm talking about with economics. It's like, this has gotten so bad to where we got like, you know, 40-year-olds like without a dollar in savings. That's so dangerous because we all know when our productive years are. Our most productive years are in our 30s, right? That's when you generate that little nest egg for your retirement. But that's the state of affairs, right? So,
well, you know, there's that statistic out there that I think it's 60% of Americans can't handle a $400 unexpected expense. So, you know, that just goes to speak about how dire need it is, and that was before the pandemic. I mean, we have a eviction moratorium that's about to happen, and I mean that's a crisis in and of itself. You're going to see so many people, you know, with no home, people being homeless.
yeah.
I mean, so many people have gone homeless already due to the pandemic, and so it's just going to be more exacerbated. It's just
Yes.
going to be.
Yeah.
That's also why I think we have to push intersectionality. We know the struggles we're facing, Therefore, we need to find ways to support people who have faced those issues and know how to, like, if I face an issue, I probably know the solution, like,
Exactly.
hey, this isn't working, so let's rewrite it. But that's why, like, we need grassroots movements. Like, I love referring to Annie's List to support women. Like, we need more women in politics in general, much
Yeah.
less women of color, trans women, people like women who have been homeless before, women who have faced classist issues. Like, that's why we need, like, again, I'm a broken record. Y'all are gonna learn who I am by the end of the show. Like, that's why we got to have those organizations to coalesce to support those people, so that way they can have the resources and we have the person with the experience.
Okay, I just want to push back on you a little bit. So, just by from what I'm understanding from your argument, just by having more people of different diversities, but not like, what about, okay, that's good, and I think that needs to be done. That's long overdue. That's what I believe. But I think it's also important who you elect and what policy positions.
That's true.
Not going to get the things you want just because you have a certain group or person or whatever. Because what we need is politicians. And I felt like you were referencing Bush or Cori Bush when you said homeless, because that is the kind of politician that I see that would have that lived experience, right? That lived experience of knowing what poverty is, knowing what a grind it is. You know that if you get in $10,000 of debt and you make $7.25, that you will never see the end of that. That will follow you until the day you die, because $10,000 of debt is too much. People can't get out of that. So the interest just accumulates and accumulates. And, that's the story of millions of Americans. But sorry, go ahead, Alexandria.
Well,
Wait,
I
hold on.
would just jump in
If
and
I
say,
can interject real quick, I think to Alexandria's credit, I think that's what she was saying. I think people who, with those lived experiences, know how to better craft policy to answer those issues. So I think that's what she was am I right?
You got it. Also, people who maybe, like, we have the perfect candidate, but they have to believe in those issues as well. Those like, understanding that those intersections exist, but that's only going to come if we have the people surrounding them with those lived experiences, because we know that our government is not just Joe Biden. It's not just the president. We know it's the vice president. We know it's the secretary of state. We know it's the departments under them, the bureaucracy. We also know that it's Congress and everybody who works in the Senate office buildings, and everyone who works as policy advisors, and everyone who works in the state legislature, and everyone who works on the city council and in the mayor's office. Like, we know that, like, it's not just about the president. We have to surround everyone with a diversity of experiences from all walks of life to be able to be representative of the people. Like, that is the whole idea of a democracy, is that the bottom denominator, like, we're going to have a numerator that reflects our denominator. So that way we have our representation of people with lived experiences who know how to combat these issues. And that's why it's like, you have to have the people with lived experience and also the people who believe and support and are allies with those lived experiences. So together, we got to emphasize intersectionality, intersectional policy, and representation.
Yeah, because all kinds of people, all different types, can have terrible policy positions. We can agree, right? Because
of course.
That's I fear that just a little bit. That
like an infiltrator, Nick. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And like, I told Gion this, and I'll tell you guys too. My family, pre-Civil War, had a plantation and things like that. I feel as though I owe a debt, right? Because of, what my family's history is. So there's nobody who wants to see, our Black and brown brothers and sisters in power more than I do, because that right there for me is so important. But the other thing about it is that those groups of people, by and large, are in poverty, and they don't vote. And maybe my whole point being tonight, I guess, is that we got to motivate them with policies that can fix their lives, like that child tax credit, right? We can all agree that's going to lift millions of kids out of poverty. we got to put money in their pockets, right?
It's showing that the personal is political and the political is personal. Like everyone has personal stakes in this. There's personal attachments. Like we all have a reason to why we're paying attention or not paying attention. And that's why that's why the intersectionality is so important.
Okay.
That's the word I live. Those are the words I've lived by. You can find me quoted in my high school newspaper, like saying, "People don't realize whether you like it or not. If you think you're apolitical, you're affected by politics."
Yes.
Exactly.
If you're
Like
not,
that's why you got to get involved.
yep. No, that's
So that kind of leads me into my next question. How did y'all get involved into politics personally? And I guess what policies matter most to y'all?
Luis, you can go first if you'd like. I know I've talked a lot.
Man, how did I get involved in politics? I mean, it almost depends on how you define being involved in politics. I think there are a lot of different points where I've taken different jumps in my career. I think the first time I got involved in politics was when I was in middle school and I ran for student government. I mean, it didn't have much of an impact in the greater beyond, but I learned how elections work. I got up there, I spoke to my classmates, I learned what people wanted. And I think that's politics, right? Maybe, it had more to do with middle school dances and, who's going to be homecoming king or queen. But in the end of the day, it's politics. You're learning how to organize people. Then I took my next jump when I got into high school and, I worked on a campaign. And then my next jump is, flying down to Houston and organizing in Brenham, Prairie View, Fifth Ward, Austin, Beaumont, all over the place. And, who knows where the next step is going to be. But I think, we got to recognize getting involved in politics doesn't mean, it doesn't only mean you're hosting a podcast. It doesn't only mean you're working on a campaign. Like we were just saying, politics is all around us and it affects everything. But as far as my passions, I think the reason I was working with Powered by Youth is because voting rights is one of my biggest passions. It's ensuring everyone has a voice, ensures we understand what everyone wants. I almost look at it like statistics, right? Or like science. When you want to run an experiment or when you want to have a good poll, you need a bigger sample size, right? The bigger your sample size, the more accurate your results are going to be. So the closer we get to 100% voter participation, the bigger our sample size is, the more precise our government will be in reflecting what the people want. And I think that's why voting rights are so important to me.
I couldn't have said it better, Luis. First I want to give props to Luis to responding to my crazy call saying, "Hey, do you want to fly down to Texas and go on the road with Beto?" Like who listens to me? Like and so he was like, "Yeah, why not?" And we made it happen. And I'm so happy I can have someone. Like I'm currently working a job in DC right now. So I'm like, I couldn't be on the ground to see like my baby project through. So I'm like, I'm happy I could have someone on the ground like Luis to help me with the eyes and ears of everything. So big shout out to Luis. But to answer your question, is that like the personal is deeply political for me in so many ways. And I think the first way is I started off when I was really young. I was brought up by a single Latina mother. My family's Mexican American. We're cognizant of the immigration issues in this country, but specifically where it hit home for me was that under the Bush administration, my mom's health insurance was canceled upon a diagnostic mammogram of breast cancer. And so I was 5, 6 years old at the time. And this was also coinciding when this progressive guy named Obama, no one knew who he was saying, "You know what? Everyone has the right to healthcare." And I was like, I like your thinking. And like that's just how I got encapsulated. I knew that the reason my mom's health insurance got canceled was because it was legal. We allowed that to happen in our country. And I knew that there were millions of other families just like mine who didn't agree with that moral. Like that is a moral basis for our country. And I got sucked in even further, knowing that that was intersectional. Like that was very much an issue for women, for mothers, and especially for Latina women and women of color, like going forward. And then that turned into a class issue because we had to pay off so much debt. Like we had to sell our house. We downsized. We moved to Miami, like because my mom's like, you know what, the ocean makes me happy, and we can get a small little apartment and be happy. And by freshman year of high school, we were homeless. And so it's like all that I saw before my eyes how systemic our issues were in America, and how having the right policy with the right people to combat that policy was critical. And that's why, like, I agree exactly with Luis. That's why voting rights are one of my number one issues, because the other issues I can't choose because we're picking and choosing amongst communities. Like, obviously, healthcare is important to me. Obviously, I lost my mother last year. And so I'm like, and I know that happened because of the way we attacked the medical system under the Trump administration. We're going through back doors. So many people don't pay attention to what federal judges are being appointed and tapped and being confirmed to the court, and how that affects policy, and how, and so that's why I'm like, you have to stay vigilant. You have to stay cognizant. And so I'm like, I know from my life, it's systemic. It's hitting every intersection. And if you don't fight it, I'm letting down the people who are coming in the future behind me and the people I'm standing on the shoulders of. So I'm like, I have to keep fighting. This system isn't fair. This system isn't right. But I can only make an impact if I choose to get in there and fix it. So like my top two issues that we have to fix right now are voting rights and climate change, because we don't have time to wait on climate. And that in and of itself is also a classist, racist, and misogynist issue because of how that falls along socioeconomic like how it stratifies along socioeconomic lines. So I'm like, we know. So like when you're talking about having the right people and the right policies, you're preaching to the choir. Like, that's why I got involved. I shouldn't have had to get involved in politics so young and so early, but that's why I'm here, and that's my life. And I'm working to make sure that, my tios and my tias and the people behind me and the people, who are, my kids one day, my grandkids are going to have a safe planet to where they are represented and they are valued in a society that cares about them. And that's why this movement is so personal for me. Like, my mom was my best friend. I always tell everyone, we had the dynamic of Mamma Mia. If you've seen that movie, like, we are attached at the hip, and I do everything for that woman, even beyond life, And so I'm like, that's why I'm here. I'm making sure that doesn't happen to any other little Alexandria out in the United States, because she lives in one of the most well-resourced countries in the world with great people in her neighborhood. It takes a village to raise children. It takes a village to raise a generation. We're surrounded by the right people. Let's make sure that our democracy is representative of those people. And that starts by working on voting rights.
Yeah, that was really powerful.
Right.
Thank you.
Man, that was powerful. That was really powerful.
I lost my mother at 8, went to lung cancer as well. So I totally and you will never have a friend like your mother. That is your best friend and, your biggest supporter. And it's, the other truth is that when you lose a parent, that's when you really enter adulthood, right? I mean, when you don't have that anymore. So I'm so sorry to hear about your mother.
Yeah, so sorry to hear about
her right here. Yeah.
But, like I said, like, I wouldn't, and, to be corny, I wrote my college essay on this. Like, I wouldn't be who I am today without those hardships. We wouldn't be in this society that we're in a much better place now than we were centuries past because of people like me, of people who faced hardship.
Yeah.
And people who refuse to take no for an answer.
Yep.
And so I'm like, people like me and Luis are dedicated to this issue to make sure that we have a better society, we have better environment around us.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like,
so
it starts on the one-on-one level.
I got two. So are you a reformer, or let's break it up and start all over again? Luis first.
Are you talking about reformers and revolutionists,
or tear it down? We gotta start all over again. I mean, I know I'm putting you on the spot right there, but I mean,
oh yeah,
Let's do it.
Yeah, I think it would be irresponsible for me to say I'd take that approach to everything. I'd take one approach to everything. I think, with issues like climate change, I don't know if I want to tear everything down, but with climate change, I'm much more revolutionary because
Okay.
frankly, you've got a limit. There's a certain amount of time we have to get something done, and you can't wait. In that sense, I'm revolutionary.
Very good.
But I do also value reform. I think there are many instances where you don't need to tear the entire system down, right? There are many instances where tweaks work well, right? We've got a system that, like Alexandria said, was much better than the one centuries ago. There are places where we can add. I think I'm a big fan of, the earned income tax credit, where we pay back more in tax returns than people pay in taxes under a certain bracket. Why don't we, instead of tearing down all of our social programs and instituting Andrew Yang's UBI, why don't we just expand the earned income tax credit, right? Little by little as we can afford to do it. So I really think it depends on what issue. And of course, it's not binary, it's a spectrum. But that was such a cop-out answer, but it really
No.
is.
Can
I feel like
Wait,
nuance is
let me
important.
follow up, and I'll bring you back. Andrew Yang's UBI policy, is that something that you would reform? Like, would you enact that as a reform measure to combat inequality?
I mean, I think we have a lot of evidence that shows us that guaranteed income
Right.
is massive for reducing stress on low income populations. It's huge for economic growth. It works wonders. My biggest issue with Andrew Yang's UBI is that it replaced a lot of social systems.
Exactly. It should be an add-on instead of a replacement. I definitely, I was going to add that, but yes, that's
so that was my biggest issue with Andrew Yang's UBI. And I think we can look to a lot of experiments that have been done in Canada, around the world, but most recently in Stockton, California. We had Mayor Michael Tubbs of Stockton, California, come speak to us at our college. And he was talking to us about the incredible success of the guaranteed income pilot in Stockton, where, and Alexandria, pitch in if you know the exact details better than I am, but I believe it was like $500 a month.
Yeah, I know a little bit
of
it.
How many, 70 families?
Yeah, I think it was, I know it was like less than 100, but or I think it was maybe 100. I think he gave it to the lowest 100 income families, and yes, it's working out wonderfully.
Fantastic. Relieved stress. It let people put food on the table, and they didn't work less.
Yeah.
But do I think we need to take $1,000 and give it to the Jeff Bezos and the Elon Musks of the world? No. I don't think we need to spend that $1,000, and that's why I like expanding the earned income tax brackets floor.
Okay, so
right, work from the bottom up.
I got to follow up with that. Okay, there's only like 15 billionaires, man. That's like $25,000. In the grand scheme of things, we would help.
But anyone making
right?
Anyone making over $150,000 doesn't need the extra $1,000.
Okay,
right? I mean, they don't need it.
I agree with that, though. What was that? What was the crux of it? What was the thing he was? What
was it? BCT?
The earned income tax credit. He's referring to the earned income tax credit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basic
and
income, okay.
You know what? That's a good point. The earned income tax credit, like the UBI, is not meant to be crisis response. It's meant to be a standard. And that's what stimulus checks were for, or, the eviction moratorium. We have different measures in place to respond to economic crises. I mean, we're not even talking about how maybe guaranteed income would prevent economic crises from arising in the first place.
Right.
But the EITC and UBI are not meant to address crises. And I would never have them do so. They're more meant to establish a floor in standard of living.
Okay. So Alexandria, same question to you: reform it or just tear it all down?
Oh, I feel like I'm gonna be a cop-out answer.
Come on, you're on raw take.
Raw take. All right, raw take is that as much as I want to be, start all over, because I think honestly, if we were able to press a reset button, just be like, all right, everyone, we're starting over, we're redoing it, that'd be great. But I also feel that, that ignores the needs of the now, because that overnight change isn't going to happen. And people like me know that overnight change isn't going to happen.
Mhm.
So I would rather get through an ACA and work up to a better healthcare system today. So that way those people who are struggling now have a solution, because people, like we've been saying this entire night, people want solutions,
That's right.
And so I'm like, if it's something we can all agree to and work up to, to changing, I forgot who said this. I want to say, like, it's very much pulling from the civil rights movement. Like, you got to start with the policy and people's hearts will follow. And I think we just got to lead with that, because people need solutions now. And we can have pundits talk all day about what the perfect policy is and what the perfect ideal world is and what a utopia could look like. But that doesn't do anything for the people who are struggling now. And the people who are struggling now, like, we know how that's stratified. And that's why people, like, we're voting the way we're voting. And I'm like, that's why I'm like, we got to get out. We got to do the right outreach. We got to coalesce with the right people. We got to make sure that we're communicating our message correctly.
All right, Miss Record. All right, so
I told you, I let you know who I was from the get-go.
That's right. Living up to that. Okay, so what?
Wait, hold on. Okay, go ahead. Because I want to add on to what Alexandria was saying.
Okay.
So go ahead. But look, and let me add on to that. So what Lewis was saying at the beginning with the UBI, and that with the billionaires getting it, and yes, you will have some people who don't necessarily need the money. But I said this in the show. You can always tax it on the back end. Like, there's always ways that we can get that money back. And to add to the reformist or revolutionary, this is my raw take. I'm a little bit of both. I mean, I'm more of infiltrating institutions and taking them over. I was in a DSA meeting, and I was asking them about that, because everybody is so against capitalism, and capitalism has its downfalls. Like, don't ever get me wrong, because I will always talk about the downfalls of capitalism. But I think if we have more people infiltrating a capitalistic system and taking over these institutions, we can run them the way we see fit. I think, for example, the whole GameStop situation was people at the local level, the average common Joe, kids. People younger, way younger than me, and around more y'all age, getting involved, using their dollars to take down hedge funds. I think if we can continue that model, but like do it in a political sense. People put their dollars. I'm all for worker co-ops, but I'm like, why don't we coalesce? We get a worker co-op together. Everybody put their dollars in, and then bam, we can pay people a working wage, because it's going to work. Everything, like, the thing is, I feel like in America, any system that we implement is going to work. We have the Nick said this statistic on a live stream a couple of weeks ago. He talked about how much trillions of dollars that the 1% have, and how wealthy. Nick, what was it? It was over $120 trillion or something like that.
It was a couple weeks ago, but off the top of my head, it's a lot of money.
It's absurd. We have the richest nation this world has ever seen. There's no reason we can literally do anything. We have the money to throw at it until we figure something out. And so I think with polling and everything like that, I think if we look at the polling, people want these big swaths of change, because like we're saying, everything is so dire. Climate change is so dire. Healthcare is so dire. Poverty is just so dire. We have people. I know y'all probably seen this story about Blackwater buying up all the homes. So that's going to just
hey, Gion,
more of the housing price.
Let me say something about BlackRock. So BlackRock as a company has decided that it would be a really great idea for revenue stream to go and buy regular folks' houses and then drive up the price of houses to levels that they can't even buy anymore. What do you do that? How is that advantageous for them? You have a constant stream of revenue that is absolutely essential to the worker, right? You know, but a place to live in, right? So sorry, Gion, I just wanted to.
Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of cleared that up. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we don't have to tear down every institution. We just have to take over most of these institutions.
And just to be broken records even more, how do we take over institutions in a democratic society?
Yeah, voting.
By getting more involved in organizing.
That's my guy, Luis.
That way he was waiting for it, is what he's really doing. I mean, I'm sure he was on that one.
But no, that was a good slam dunk. But and that's what I'm really trying to do with P.O.P. We've partnered with Powered by the People. We've done a couple of events with them. Nick was just at a Sunrise movement, and he was there representing P.O.P. And so that is what we're really trying to do. We're trying to build this coalition, and I'm glad now we have y'all, and we can coordinate with y'all. And because I definitely believe getting people registered to vote is definitely that. I mean, that's one of P.O.P.'s core main things, getting people registered to vote. And not only that, but getting people politically active and knowledgeable, because there are a Harvard study shows that our generation is one of the most active in politics generations. We're more active in politics than other generations have been before. But we just have all these different bubbles all around the place. And so we really need to like come together. And like, I'm all for taking, like, revolutionizing the Democratic Party, or reforming it, or just changing it from the inside out, because I think, like we've been saying all night, we needed to be more representative of these people, of the people on the call, and the working class people. And there are hurdles, like we said also in the night, there's economic hurdles and stuff like that. But I think there's ways that we can get through that. I remember I was a dishwasher working at a local restaurant out here in Katy, and I was like starting my political career and all of that, and it is hard. It's definitely hard. But there's ways that you can do it. And as you bring more people in, as you bring more groups of people in, more groups of young people, you can definitely experiment, try different things. Like we said, people work late into the night. I think having a late night political meeting would be good. I mean, just like almost a recap, because a lot of things go down in these democratic organizations within these different cities, and that's where it all kind of starts. And I know by me going to them, I'm like, first of all, I'm the only person like under the age of 55. Then I'm the only Black male. It's just, I'm like a unicorn when I enter these meetings. And so, we need more people in those meetings, but it's going to be hard. But I think, and that's a suggestion I will probably bring up to them, that maybe we need to start having late night meetings too. A second one. But
somebody said, I don't remember who said it. Maybe it was Jefferson. He said states are the laboratories of democracy, right? So I mean, if we got to do it on the state level first. You can show it works on the state level. You can do it, federally too. I was going to ask Alexandria one more question, because you said the ACA was very important, and I too had this love relationship with Obama. I was ultimately kind of disappointed with the way it ended, but inside the ACA, there's a provision that says that if there's ever a pandemic, that they can open up Medicare for all. Now, we got a Democratic president in office right now who got into office by saying that he is going to
do a public option
pandemic, right? So don't you think don't you think we're on dangerous ground here? When we've done it. We've gotten the 2 senators from Georgia. We do have a majority. There is a filibuster, but we have it, and we have a Democratic president, and we control the House. What do you think what is your prediction for the midterms that are coming up, given the information that we have right now? And are you worried of a resurgence?
That's a good question, Nick.
Resurgence of
Republicanism.
Taking one of the either the House or the Senate.
Yeah, any one of those could totally stifle Biden's agenda completely. Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say one last thing. You just know it from my perspective. My perspective is that if you're not doing the economic policies and you're not going to get people to come out and vote. That's just my opinion. But what do you think is your prediction for the midterms?
My prediction for the midterms. Wow, I feel, this is my minor CNN moment. I'm just gonna let it sink in.
But you got stuff that we need to hear, Alexandria.
Alex, are you about to pull up an interactive map right behind you?
Yeah.
You know what?
Listen, right here.
My microwave right here. She's a little broken, but that's okay. What my predictions? Yeah. Listen. Organizer style and government major style, every election is fair game. Okay. And I think we're dealing with a different beast with Trumpism running in the Republican Party, because we know that he is their front runner for fundraising. But, my entire life I've lived by the mantra like, good things don't come easily. And my entire life's been a fight. So I'm ready to put one up. And, I think if we continue to show this country what we can do with democratic policies, we know that they're popular. We know that they're what people want. In fact, we got people on the Trump side using our talking points and not even knowing, Yeah. And so organizer me says, do the outreach, make sure people know it. The government major in me knows that American politics, we flip-flop every election. Like, that's nothing new. That is textbook. Like, that is how partisan politics works. So, with those two things in mind and taking a grain of salt and being a little pragmatic to want to be a little progressive, everything's a fight. And so I don't make a prediction until I get into the field.
Oh, but you got to make a prediction. It's all on the line right now. Come on. So the Democrats hold the House, yes or no?
If we fight for it.
Oh, if Democrats hold the House, yes or no?
We got to have people fighting for it. And
okay.
I think
so I'll take
that is what I'm going to make my prediction on. I'm not one to talk without having my facts. I'm not one to talk without, we can postulate all day. We got to have the facts before we speak. We don't even know what those polling numbers look like, much less if they're being done correctly.
We don't, but historically, right, the Democrats haven't held the House consecutively since like the 90s or something like that. That we used to own that.
I'm not a history major, so I'm going to take your word for it.
I'm like the leopard. There's not very many of them left, history majors. Nobody does it.
But, but I think that we also haven't had unified government in a very long time.
Very long time.
Yeah.
So I think that 2016 was a reset. We don't know what's going on in American politics anymore. We have no clue.
No harm in making a prediction then.
No one's making predictions anymore because 2016, I think, gave us all trust issues.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it threw a monkey wrench in everything.
But what 2018 showed us is that if we get our if we got our sleeves rolled up and we do the work, we can make things happen. 2020 showed us the same thing. But we continued that progress. So with that, I think we can only make predictions when we have people sign up to get out and do the work, knock on some doors, make some phone calls, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, get out to your college campus, host a voter registration drive, join Powered by Youth, shameless plug there.
PoweredxYouth.org.
Poweredx Youth on Instagram. There's a link tree, join Powered by People, and find a candidate in your area you're passionate about, because if you're passionate about it, you're going to keep with it. You're going to keep in the fight. And that's all we can make our predictions on. So
Okay,
as soon as I see the fight starting, I'll get back to you.
Okay, the U.S. Senate, Democrats hold it or lose it. I'm just joking.
I'm gonna make that prediction. I think we lose it.
All right,
We're gonna
Louis,
lose
I
it.
know it's a tough question. You don't have to answer.
You know what? And I'm really, I'm trying to be optimistic, but I can definitely see us losing the Senate.
I'll answer the question.
But I think in Texas we have a very unique situation. I think especially if we try and recreate the Georgia model, and if POP, empowered by the youth, empowered by the people, and we can continue to bring all of these different organizations together and coalesce the left together and really fight on progressive policy, I think we have a real chance of really flipping Texas blue. I honest to God see it, because I just see so many people wanting change and so many people just wanting more from their government. So I think if we if we message it in that way, I think more people will definitely come aboard, and I think more people will be like, yeah, I want my government to do more for me. I don't want you to do for the 1% and the billionaire class. I want you to help me out, because they've been getting helped out forever. I mean, like your politicians are not, everybody, like, that's just how it goes. That's like the quota. Like, we help we help the billionaire class and the corporations. Like, that's Republican or Democrat. And I think, and that's why I think Bernie had such a grassroots movement, because he's talking about the people. I think in Beto's name, powered by the people, I think that also helps out, because you're bringing the people involved, you're bringing the disenfranchised involved. And so, I think in Texas we can really make some fundamental change down here, and we can really make some noise. And it takes, like we've been saying, it takes young people like us, it takes organizers, and we need to get people run. We need to also run for office. That's like the biggest part.
Okay, just so I can be fair to Alexandria, I'll just go ahead and lay my opinion out there. I don't think the Democrats hold the Senate. They might hold the House. You guys already know the reasons why. Louis, I got to hear from you, man. Are the Democrats going to hold the House? Are they going to hold the Senate? And if so, why?
Well, I think, we're still a little bit of ways away, and there's a lot of things that could play out. And I don't think you'll like this, but I think if Joe Biden continues with some bipartisanship, he might be able to hold it. If he gets through a bipartisan infrastructure bill, then we're doing exactly what you're saying. The Democrats are delivering on promises. They're building infrastructure, they're delivering. And if he delivers, as opposed to gets stuck because he can't get agreement, if he just lets Republicans completely stifle his legislative agenda, then I think you're gonna see a lot of people say, well, the Democrats aren't doing anything. I think it's harder to recognize that Democrats don't do anything because they're being blocked by Republicans, but I think it's still a sentiment that gets felt. So if Joe Biden can't get anything done, then I think you will see a lot of those sentiments of Democrats just got in here and didn't do anything, their fault or not. However, if he does manage to keep bringing out these shiny objects, these infrastructure bills, stimulus plans, economic plans, whatever, then I think you can see that continued momentum in 2022. And then I think we can hold.
Follow up to that. I got to ask a follow up. So in his new infrastructure plan, I heard some really great stuff about the climate change being the problem of our generation, right? Well, what happens if the Republicans don't think climate change is even real, right? So that's starting right there. That's a problem. But what if they strip out all of the Green New Deal stuff and we just get like one of these boring fossil fuel, not going to change anything infrastructure plans?
Yeah,
is that
cut it out too much?
Is that a red line for you? Is that like, I can't? That's just too much bipartisanship from you, Joe Biden. I'm going to have to,
When bipartisanship becomes equivalent to inaction, then yes, I agree. But I think from my initial read over of the infrastructure bill, it didn't seem very gutted. I think it still seemed quite ambitious. when I first read over the bipartisan bill that they put out.
Does it meet the moment?
Geez, I mean, it's hard to meet the moment. I mean, I really don't think they're going to be
Stop it, Willis. You're going to be living in this. Like,
No, you know what? I think
you know?
I think climate change is not going to be solved just by an infrastructure bill, right? Infrastructure is not the solution to climate change. I think it's
Sure.
a big part of it.
It's a
big part of it.
global issue.
But-
It's not only us, even though we are a big contributor, but you know,
Yeah.
this is a world issue. That climate change is far beyond, you know, just us. And that's one of the reasons I think, you know, we did re-enter the climate Paris Accords, and you know, I think we need to go further. I think we definitely need to go further.
But not even just that. I think climate goes beyond transportation, right? Because we can set up as many electric charging stations we want around the country, but at the end of the day, if that electricity comes from coal power plants, we've done nothing.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Power
so
load, right.
a lot of it, transportation is huge, but a lot of it also needs to be energy.
Yes.
You know, I think that's a completely new beast that we need to tackle. And frankly, I think we're at a point where nuclear needs to be under serious consideration. I really think so.
I'm getting there too, Louis. I just like it really is a question of base power load, isn't it? Because you have to have a certain supply of electricity that's always able on demand. That's the issue with wind and solar, is that one, we don't have the storage capacity, and two, solar panels don't work at night. So you got to have an alternative, right?
I wish it hadn't gone to this point. I think, you know, tidal, wind, hydro, solar are much more sustainable and much safer, but we're in a race against the clock, you know, and there's nothing we can do as a group about the inaction of the past. And unfortunately, you know, I think nuclear is extremely ambitious. It's kind of risky. It really is.
Risky.
Yeah, look at Chernobyl. Exactly.
But damn, I mean,
given
do
the
we
scale
have another option to really provide like clean energy en masse soon enough? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. Given the scale of the problem, scientists said that if we pass 350 million parts per million, we would be doomed. I think we are at 400 million parts per million.
We passed it up, right?
We passed that number. So, I guess this is kind of like a brain trust question. Anybody can answer, but what is needed? Like, what is needed? Are we talking reversal of like, we're now pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and sequestering it somehow? Or is it something that can be changed? Like we're just not putting any more carbon, but we're now neutral. You know, we're carbon neutral at the very least.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Nicholas. I took 1 year of AP Environmental Science in high school, and that's about it.
You can look outside.
I wish we could get an environmental engineer or scientist on here to give us the specifics. My very rookie analysis is really just that, you know, emissions need to come down as part of it, at least. That's one issue that needs to be tackled. And I think the way we reduce emissions, which are basically just how we get our supply of energy, nuclear is the big one.
So historically, if we look back historically, you know, there's some good lessons in the New Deal. FDR, you know, he commissioned whole groups of people to go out and reforest, you know, areas that had been just totally ripped down, you know, which prevents soil erosion. That's a huge problem out west. You know, I think we got to be thinking huge. Like, if the Pentagon is saying that the biggest threat to national security is the climate, maybe we should take our military, retrofit it as the climate world police or something like that. Anywhere there's a climate disaster, we're flying in. These guys are dropping sandbags if there's a hurricane, whatever, you know. Like, what about that? Tell me how you feel about that? Like, something that's kind of where I'm at with it. That it's almost to the point where we're going to have to retool institutions to deal with this, right?
Or maybe we just need a civilian climate corps, something like that, something that's on the table.
Good idea, Alexandria. I like it. What about you, Louis? Do you think it's do you think that kind of is more meeting the moment, or do you think we can still build these solar panels? Maybe a scientist comes down the line and he's got something that can pull the carbon out of the air, but it's not right now. Or do you go all in, right?
I mean, I think what you're proposing is a great idea. The military does a ton of humanitarian stuff already. Increasing humanitarian efforts of the military would be, you know, not bad. I really don't see where the issues come in. Not only are you helping protect lives around the world, you're also, from a very cold realpolitik side, you're building relationships with people around the world, and you're strengthening America's presence around the world, not with guns, but by helping people through support.
With butter, giving them butter.
I think,
but it's still just a Band-Aid. That doesn't go to the
Yeah.
root. That's a Band-Aid on climate
and
disasters.
and before we go to those comments, Archie, I want to add to the climate thing. I think by also, it needs to, everything needs to also happen at a local level. And so I think at a local level, we need to, advocate for more green spaces and advocate for, just greener infrastructure and things of that matter. So I think, also, we need to look at it at a federal level, but we also need to look at it at a local level and what we could do on the ground to help fight climate change. But go ahead, Archie, go with those comments.
Oh, Archie, come on, you're the best in the world. That's Archie, that's such a great question, right? Because I mean, we may have to rethink. We can't have billions of plastic bottles anymore, guys. We can't be producing millions of plastic toys. It's just, it is. You got to, in my humble opinion, and it's based off of no research or anything like that, that you have to reduce the carbon footprint, and you cannot be on this model of selling worthless crap for $1 and then people don't even use it and throw it away. We got to move away from that to something that's more sustainable.
Archie, is there a question?
We have the best viewers and the smartest viewers. I just want to say it because I forgot to mention that.
We do have this view.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know exactly what this guy's talking about. He's talking about when this all kind of happened with Force the Vote, and they wanted, well, Force the Vote was for Medicare for all, if I'm not mistaken, and the squad didn't use their they didn't use their power in Congress to to force the vote. And then AOC said that she wanted to fight for a $15 minimum wage, and it came and went, and she didn't fight for it. And so I think that's another thing. I think this kind of alludes to what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about getting the right people in office. We need to have people that's going to fight. We can vote. That's why, I'm not opposed to, voting for, if you're fighting for the right policies and you're going to fight like hell and you're not going to take no for an answer, and that that you're going to attack people, like you're going, because I feel like we come so much to criticisms from the right, and we let that like totally tear down like the policies that we fight for. But if I think there's a way that we can fight for things from the left and say, you know, the people are behind us. If you look at polling, people want this. People want more from the government. I mean, I think there was a poll that I posted the other day on Facebook. People are in favor of socialistic policies. But the thing that is said under that, people are wanting policies that affect them more. So it's not even the socialistic label, it's people want more from their government. And I think that always needs to thing we need to harp on.
Just on the $15 an hour, like it wasn't so much that got voted down, right? It was the manner in which it was done. Right, we had Democrats from states where they could really use $15 an hour, doing all kinds of antics and things that are totally if you would disagree with it, just vote it down. You don't need to spit in the face of workers by doing like what Kristen Sinema did, like that's some sort of joke. Like that is not right. It's not right for people who are struggling. Go ahead, Alexandria. You can have something to say. You want to add to that?
Like, on one hand, as an organizer, I'm like, keep the Democratic coalition because at least we can work with them. But on the other hand, I think it's really a letdown for not only the labor unions who fought so hard to keep this coalition, but for immigrant workers. That's my community out there, making sure that we're out doing the hard manual labor and that is on the backs of immigrants and is on the backs of Black and brown people who are doing the labor. And I think it's kind of a letdown in those communities when they rallied so hard for those senators in those specific states that we know we just mentioned. It's kind of hard,
Yeah.
And it's like, we know that we towed the line. We towed the line for these people.
You did the work, but they didn't show up for you. Is kind of like what you're saying.
Well, I mean, and some credit and very, very, very minimal credit to Joe Biden is, when he did it, but he did it for federal workers. So yes, he did pass $15 minimum wage, but it's for federal workers, and I mean that does impact a lot of people. But he needs to be like, it needs to
universal.
Everyone. Yeah, it needs to be universal. It needs to reach everyone. Like he did $1 billion in student loan debt. But when we have over $1 trillion in student loan debt, like $1 billion is just a drop in the hat.
All right. So let me follow that up. Luis, I got a question for you, buddy. What do you feel about forgiving all these student debts? You know that all that money is not circulating in the economy. It's just going into the bank accounts of the CEOs. Get rid of all the student debt, yes or no? The whole thing, a little bit, or all of it?
Geez, I mean, frankly, I don't feel qualified economically.
You don't have any student debt or anything like that?
Answer that. I do not.
Okay.
I do Army ROTC, so I'm getting my tuition paid for.
Okay, and but like on the face of it, okay, economically you see it, but is there a moral argument to be made to getting rid of all that student debt, or is it just purely an economic argument that you would make, or do you just not?
Oh, I think it's purely an economic argument that I would make. I'm not sure what the long run consequences would be of canceling so much debt. The economy is an extremely complicated machine.
Yeah.
And, deleting a bunch of zeros in one place, even if it sounds good initially, could have some unexpected consequences that I'm not sure. The one thing I can say with certainty is that I believe that public schools should be tuition free. I think that, going forward, we should have government schools be free. If you want to get a higher education, it should be available to you.
But
and I'm not only higher education, but trade schools too, because I think 100%. Trade schools totally get, they totally get left out in that. So, because everybody's not meant to go to college. So I think trade schools also need to be.
Let me follow up a little more. And I'm not picking on you, Lewis. You just have great answers.
I don't know. I think you are.
Yeah. But maybe so. I don't know. So Alexandria, feel free to answer this one too. So the notion of the economy, right? Like you got to have money circulating. And if you have lots of people circulating the money, the economy does well. And I know neither of us are experts on this, so I'm not trying to do that to you, but who like, wouldn't you be by allowing college to suddenly be free and not taking care of everybody else's past debts, who are you really taking care of there? Are you taking care of the college student in the university? Or are you taking care of the bank who subsidized that loan and put it out there, right? So
Yeah.
if you were going to make it free for public tuition, wouldn't you also eliminate the debt? You know, it's almost like you sell only half.
I don't know. I feel like the thing is that, and I don't want to, like paint banks in a very like pretty light, because, financial institutions have not treated the working class very well historically. But I think we also need to recognize that banks in large part are also the deposits of working class people, right? Banks failing, like we may not love the financial institutions of this country, but if a bank fails, that's going to hurt working people a lot.
True. But do you think that there are banks out there that have, and again, I know you're not an expert, I'm just asking, do you think there's banks out there that derive their entire income through student debt payments? Or do you think maybe these banks are more diversified? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't need that to be that, they derive all of their assets from student income. It just means that if their assets versus liabilities, ratio is so, I guess, so even, or that they only have just enough assets above their liabilities to the point where, forgiving student debt would bring them down and make them insolvent, then it's an issue. It doesn't matter how much more money they have. If getting rid of that source is what puts them over the edge, then you might end up with another Lehman Brothers,
But can I jump in here?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, please. I've literally no idea what you're talking
Come on.
about.
No, because I think, frankly, we're not looking at this from a comprehensive lens. Like, the bank is part of one larger institution and one larger system. And what the heart of the question is, and I think what you're getting at, is that who do we want to protect? Who deserves the most equity in terms, and I'm not talking about financial equity, I'm talking about like in terms of justice. Who deserves the equity here? And it's the college student that needs to have everyone has a human right to education. That is full stop, UN recognized. The entire universe that has come together to coalesce has said everyone has a human right to education. So that's full stop. But we understand that there are obstacles from an institutional lens, and it's not just the bank, it's financial policy that we have in our governments, and that's in the United States. And I think that if we really want to, this is a really critical issue to bring back to youth-centered politics. One way that we can get people to care about, one way we can get young people to care about politics is explain to them, hey, we could cancel your student loans, we could cancel your debt by electing the right people. And I think, frankly, also by not taking a fully comprehensive lens, we also know that if we elected the right people, we could have progressive tax codes that it wouldn't even matter.
You mean they wouldn't have to raise the price of gas to fund the government anymore?
So that's what I'm saying. There's a whole comprehensive thing, but that comes back to our main, broken record point.
You got to organize.
You got to organize, you got to have the right people. And that's why we got to get young people in politics. And that's why Luis and I are here. We're here to talk about how to get young people in politics, because we all have a diverse set of experiences and walks of life and beliefs and ideology about why we're in this fight and why we're bringing other people into this fight. And I think that's what we're centering our conversation on and our energy and our mantras. We're bringing people into the fight. Student education and student loan debt is one facet of a very, very multifaceted issue. But if we were to center that back on voting rights and expanding access to the ballot, that intersects, and we can take care of those issues. Because frankly, the question is, how do we bring justice and how do we bring equity? By listening to what the people want.
So you're in agreement with eliminating student debt because you feel like that will bring more people to the polls, because that is a young person issue, right?
Okay. So I'm not saying that just because it's going to bring young people to the polls.
Yeah,
That's not,
I
I'm
mean,
not saying that.
you're
That's
appealing
not taking a clear policy stance. I currently am evaluating, because also when we just say flat out cancel, like how much are we canceling? What does the economic
of it.
cost look like for how long? And, I'm like, but bottom line is that I want to help the college student who's getting through college to get their education because they have a human right to do so. So I'm like, how do we get there? We got to have the right conversations. So I'm like, if you have a stake in this issue, you got to get out to the polls. So like, I'm endorsing a comprehensive conversation on it. My personal because personally, like I have to set a professional boundary here. I work in a legislative office to where we're talking about these issues. So I don't want to make sure that my personal endorsement of policies X, Y, or Z reflect as a personal endorsement of the people that I work for.
Sure.
And so setting that professional boundary I think is very important. However, in doing so, the main issue here is that we have to take care of the college student. We have to take care of the single mom. We have to take care of the homeless woman on the street. Like all of these things, like is why we're bringing in young people into politics. And that's why Luis and I are here. And that starts with a few fundamental issues that we're trying to solve.
Can I ask you another question? Is there do you think in politics, do you ever feel like there's something wrong with just offering people things? Like, do you feel like if, like, you kind of said, well, it's not, when you were saying about the thing, and I agree with you 1000%, but is there a hesitancy to give dollars to average people or to give people relief because maybe it looks like something government's not supposed to do, or maybe just gives them a weird feeling? Or something like that, because I actually think if you're going to appeal to young people, just appeal to them directly on their own. Don't be afraid to say, hey, we're going to get rid of your debt, and hey, that money that you have, go build a family, go invest in a house, go get a car, take care of the stuff you need to take care of. You guys should just be open with that like there's nothing to be afraid of. Nobody's going to hit back at you that matters in any kind of force, if that's the way you say it. But if you're afraid that people are going to say, well, hey, like that millionaire kid over there, he got some debt relief. What business does he have getting debt relief? He's got millions of dollars. Don't let that scare you. Don't let it scare you.
Because it takes away
from
like right? the overall, like it helps more of the little guy than it helps the big guy.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
I think my only issue with it is if it becomes a short-term policy to achieve short-term results, right? Like if and again, like I want to emphasize, I'm a rising sophomore in college. I've taken one economics class. I don't know enough about this to know what the best policy would be. But if in the long run, we can objectively say that canceling student debt is the best policy for the country and, would benefit people the most in the long run, then I have no qualms about going out and saying, like, you know what, we will cancel your student debt if you show up to the polls. Where it becomes an issue for me is if then we're starting to look at a trade-off. If we're looking at it like canceling these student loans is going to be good for you in the short run because I'm canceling your debt, and it's going to be good for me in the short run because I'm getting you out to the polls and potentially voting for me.
Yeah,
but it's not necessarily the best policy.
Yeah.
Again, so it really needs to be that it actually is the best policy. And at that point, it's just campaigning off of policy.
And I apologize if maybe that was maybe I said it in a harsh way or something, and I didn't mean it like that. Not at all. Go ahead.
So look, I do want to add to this. We've talked about all throughout this live stream how America, how we have the resources. I feel as though we are the richest nation this world has ever seen. And I feel like when we don't have certain basic things that other countries that don't have the economic funds that we do doing these policies, I think that makes us look bad. I like I said, America can do anything. We can cancel student loan debt. We can give up to anyone $100,000 a year if we wanted to. But I'm not advocating for that. But I'm just saying I think that universal health care, canceling student debt, you know, things like that. Those economic issues America can do with you know, I look into our debt a lot, and there's a book called Myth About the Debt, and how we own the most of our debt. Like a lot of people like to fearmonger China owns us. No, China just they own we owe them, like our debt ratio with them is a lot higher. I think it's a little bit over 12%. If I'm probably messing that number up, but like Americans, we owe ourselves the most money, and we can always write that off. You know, like we can write that off with a stroke of a pen. I mean, because you know we have so many resources, because we have so much money. So I do think we can do those things. I think I think we're disingenuous to our constituents and to our citizens when we tell people, oh, I don't know if we can do that, because I think we can. America can do anything. I mean, we put a man on the moon, and I know some people are like, you know, oh, I don't know about that, but you know, America has done a lot of things, and I think you know we can do those basic simple.
Hey, so I know we've kept you guys on for a while, and you guys, we need you fresh in the morning to go on and continue your campaign for voting rights. I'm right there with you. And look, I know Gion will be reaching out to you guys, but if there's any way we can help, I know we're with you, because we 100%, you know, we may have been asking difficult lefty questions here that, you know, it seems to exist on our side of the spectrum, but we believe in what you're doing, and we know that needs to be done. And thank you for doing the work. And, you know also I asked some very difficult questions that puts you guys on the spot, but like, let me tell you, like, you answered it like a fucking champ. Excuse me, like a champ. And yeah, so I think there are probably need to get going, or maybe eat some food. Do you want to?
Yeah, man. Yeah, we've been on here for like 2 hours plus.
It's been fun though. Okay, let's just do that. Engaging the youth is
No, I think the best advice I've ever gotten from an organizer, because everyone obsesses over this question: how do you get youth to care about politics? How do you get youth involved in politics? Like, you know, it's the question that never leaves anyone's house in politics. And I think the best advice I've ever gotten from a campaign where we flipped a 22-year conservative seat for a progressive Democrat: you treat them like normal people. You talk to them just like you would any other voter. And that's how we did it, you know? And so how do we approach any other voter? By bringing them the issues that matter. The issues that matter to me, like if I care about healthcare, if I care about immigration, that is no different from my mother caring about healthcare and immigration. That's no different from my grandmother caring about healthcare and immigration. And, you know, maybe we have different approaches on how to do it, but I think, you know, to like kind of wrap up what you were just saying, Nick, and bringing into like what the future of the Democratic Party is, just kind of tied back into that conversation as well. Like, we ask lefty questions, we ask like, you know, nitpicky policy questions, but, you know, we're here because we believe in the right thing to do. We're just here to have a conversation about it, you know? And like, I might have a different approach than you, but at the end of the day, we both know that immigrants deserve rights. Right. They deserve passive citizenship. We know that healthcare is a universal human right. We know that education is a universal human right. But that's why I'm like, having those conversations on the one-on-one personal level and directly making sure that young people are involved in those conversations is how you get young people to care. Because going back to that statistic, the whole reason we founded Powered by Youth is because in Texas itself, over 2/3 of the youth population in Texas has voting eligible age had never been contacted by a campaign. And if you're an organizer, you know that you're failing GOTV with those margins. And that's especially true for like the margin of 75% of Latinx young voters had never been reached out to. So I'm like, how do you fix it? Like the data shows you talk to them. You get people out to vote. We know that's how we flipped Georgia. We called everyone. We got 5 people out per precinct. We flipped the state. And it's purely the power of people. And that's why like we're here. Our strategy is to engage young people by talking to them and getting them involved in their communities. And that's where I'm going to make the pitch about Powered by Youth. Like our Powered by Youth Ambassador program works directly underneath the Powered by People Ambassador program. And it is the strategy functions on relational organizing within not only your friends and family, but your community. So on top of statewide organizing, and Luis and I could talk about strategy and outreach plans all day long. He knows that I will. He knows that I'm on him to do so as well.
I'm here for it.
But at the end of the day, we have to delegate that down to a team captain in the congressional district who leads their congressional district and doing voter registration drives. And so we also know that we have volunteers who have to make those voter registration drives possible. And so we keep going local and centralized. And that's where we need young people to sign up to do that work with us. And that's why if you're a young voter listening right now, or you're in high school, or you know what? I was a politically motivated elementary school student. I did a little volunteer internship thing for young kids at my local chamber of commerce. Like if you're listening and you're motivated, reach out to us. And even if you're not a young voter, you can work with Powered by People. We have in-state and out-of-state teams. Beautiful. But the whole mantra of Powered by People is that we have people powering this movement.
And let me just add to that, because me and Alexandria, you may disagree on how to get there, but I will put on my suit of armor and go march out into the field of battle with her to get that stuff done. Like that's just
of course.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, it's in the Constitution, I believe, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I think if I can add one last thing on that question, Archie.
Go ahead.
I think almost challenging the premise of that question of like, how do we get youth to care, almost assumes they don't care. I really believe that the vast majority of youth do care. And the issue is, like Alexandria pointed out, no one's reaching out to them. They don't know what to do with that passion, right? So a lot of people may care, but they're just sitting around watching CNN and they're not really sure what to do. And that's where organizing comes in. You got to present them the opportunities. You got to give them a silver platter of like, hey, you care, come work with us, get out. And people will get out. Canvassing door to door around Texas, people wanted to come out. All you had to do was let them know that there was something going on. At Prairie View, we were letting people know that day that there was an event. And Gion, you saw how many people showed up.
Yeah. We had
we found people walking.
People. Yeah.
Oh yeah, people just we let them know, hey, Beto O'Rourke's coming to speak. You want to come? Boom, they showed up. I was knocking doors in 5th Ward, Houston. I just let people know, here, we're having a rally down the road with Beto O'Rourke. You want to come? Yes.
Yeah, that one was
on the spot, things like that. So it really, really is that people already care. We just have to empower them.
Yeah, man. I think what y'all are doing is awesome. And like I said before, P.O.P and Raw Take, we've partnered with Powered by the People because, like Nick said, we do believe in what y'all are fighting for. And yes, we might have a goal, a different way about going about it, but the fact is, we're still on the same team. We're still trying to fight for the people and have a real change for the people. And so, it doesn't matter, and that's what Pop does so much. Like, that's what we're doing. We're bringing people together. We're bringing the different orgs together because there's more power in numbers, and if we can get that solidarity and get out there, we could really make some things happen. So I really want to thank Alexandria and Luis for being on the show today on our Monday live stream. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any uploads. We're gonna put y'all's info in the description so they can reach out to y'all, and we'll probably be we'll
talk.
together.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
Who knows? That could be a young man or a girl that's going to run for office.
Yes, Nick, we thank you, man, for your impressive question asking.
I'm a history major.
Always keeping us on our toes, Nick.
I try. I gotta hold somebody accountable. All right, sorry. I apologize. I'm sorry.